Hi, my name is Scott, and I live in Toronto, here in Canada. I've had chronic idiopathic urticaria or chronic hives for over 20 years, and I've researched a ton. I've learned a lot. I've seen a ton of different doctors, and I've come up with a few things, few strategies that really help me and have gotten me to a point now where I'm in remission from the hives, and whenever I see the hives kind of come back a little bit, I can also get myself back into remission very reliably. So I've sort of found what works for me. So I thought it would be helpful to share that information. So decided to put these videos together. I actually did a much longer video earlier, but it ended up being about an hour, so pretty long. So I thought it would be a little bit easier to re-record these smaller chunks, so you could kind of watch them in sequence. I thought that might be a little better. So so this is the first of 4 videos where I talk about my experience with the hives and what I've been able to do to cure them. So in this first video, I'm going to talk about just kind of a general framework that I use to just pick apart the hive problem, and it's just useful to frame up the problem. So you know, like kind of help me deal with it in different ways and simplify things a little bit. I'm going to share my screen in a second. Before I get started, though, I should say that it's really important that you know I have no medical training at all. I'm not a doctor. I'm like the furthest thing from it. So apply that grain of salt as you're watching all of this. It's purely just, you know, my experience. The other thing is that I'm going to mention some products and some books and so forth in my talk. These are not organizations or authors that I have any kind of commercial relationship with. They're just things that I found that were helpful. So just know that all this just comes from purely a place of just a sincere effort to help. I'm hoping that there's somebody out there that will watch this and maybe realize some relief, because this hive thing is no fun. So bear with me a second here. I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is me, covered in hives. Obviously, this is these were taken at a couple different points in my life with the experience with hives. Pretty much over the last couple decades. I saw my first hive on me when I was about 24 years old. That was back in 1997, so a long time ago. There was no apparent cause for the hives, and I've had every test in the book. I'm not allergic to anything. I have no health issues. I'm a healthy guy. I stay in shape. I eat well. You know, there's really nothing wrong with me except for this, which is obviously pretty significant, as you can see from the photos. So these were periods, obviously, where I was flared up with hives pretty bad, and anybody who has this knows they kind of go up and down. But for me, most of the time, they were pretty bad. You can see the red bumps in the pictures here. I would get these everywhere. What you can't see in the pictures is the discomfort. These things are just awful. Each one of them feels like somewhere between a mosquito bite and a sunburn. So very, very itchy. It's not the kind of itch you can ignore. It's persistent. It never stops. Scratching it doesn't help. They keep you up at night. They take over your entire being. You know, when I was like I am in these pictures here, it was almost like hard to breathe, you know, because you're just so itchy. So if you have chronic urticaria right now, chronic hives, my heart goes out to you. It's debilitating, and nobody knows how bad it is. It's an awful thing to live with because it's so isolating. Nobody knows what you're going through, and and it's daily, and you don't want to complain all the time, but yet it's the number one thing you're thinking about, and it's just horrible. So I know how bad you're suffering. I feel you. It's just the worst. It's such a it leaves you feeling so hopeless, and it's so hard to get motivated and keep pushing to try different things to improve your health. So I'm hoping some of this might be helpful. I tried every treatment in the book. So I did all the different antihistamines. I tried all the drugs that behave like antihistamines. I did the steroids. I did Xolair when that became available. Unfortunately for me, just nothing worked. So I really had to become an advocate for my own health and find my own solutions. So what I'm sharing in these videos is the result of 24 years of trying this and trying that and failing about 1 million times. And what shook out of that was a bunch of information that now, thankfully for me anyway, for my physiology, very reliably gets me cured, gets me into remission, so that I don't have to live with this. And thankfully, it's an approach that, although it requires some diligence, I can do it for a short period of time and then kind of go back to life as normal. So it's sort of a surgical strike in terms of the strategies that I use. So I'm going to take you through just a basic framework for understanding the hives that really helped me kind of break things down and pick apart the problem so that I could tackle it in the right way. It took me a long time to get to this, as simple as it is. But once I figured this out, everything else, as far as the remedies I was trying, started falling into place. So number one, well, there's basically two variables involved. Number one is how much histamine is in your body right now. What is your histamine level? How much histamine is in your bloodstream? And then second variable is how reactive are you to that histamine? And those were the two sort of key variables to managing life with hives. And I found that I needed to attack them separately and think about them separately and create very different strategies for each of these variables. So I learned a lot about foods, as you do. When you're reading about this stuff, there's so much association to allergy with this, but I had no allergies. I had zero allergies. So for me, the connection to food really didn't make sense. But still, as I learned, there's many foods that just contain a lot of histamine, whether you're allergic or not. And there's other foods that cause the body to just produce more histamine or release more histamine. So food, I discovered, really did matter, even though it wasn't a trigger necessarily for me. So what I learned was, your body will, take on histamine from a food, say, that has a lot of it, or a food like alcohol that releases a lot of histamine. Alcohol, I discovered, has 4 different ways of driving the hive process in the body. Much to my chagrin, I love a glass of wine or a beer on a hot summer day. But that one in particular deserves special mention because it's just brutal. So these things, they bring your histamine levels up. Now your body can take apart histamine and get rid of it. And it's processed like so many other things in your body. Your body will deconstruct it, get rid of it, and take care of it. So your histamine level will go down over time. But it's very easy to bring it back up. You eat some nuts, for example, that brings your histamine level back up. You have some shellfish. For me, a shrimp in particular, boom, brings the histamine levels right up. And then your body will bring it down again until you eat something else, et cetera. So it kind of goes up and down, but it can have this cumulative effect. And when you start looking at what you're eating, it's a real factor. It takes a while to get it out of your stream. But what I found was that, there was a point where I would react to it. And as long as I wasn't going above my general level of reactivity, I would be fine. But there was a lot of things that could make me more reactive. And that could be any number of things. I noticed over the years, for example, if I got sick, I would be so much more reactive than normal. So if I got a cold or a flu or whatever, even allergy season, I would just be more reactive. If I was stressed out with work, and then, autoimmune imbalances, stuff like that would make me more reactive. And if I had a higher histamine level and I was going above that general baseline of reactivity, I'd start to see hives. And that would vary. If I was at a more reactive period, I'd react more often to foods. And if I was really reactive, I mean, I would react to anything, like sunlight. If my arm was out in the sun on a patio, I'd get hives on my arm. Pressure even. I could scratch my arm and create a line of hives. Chemicals on my skin, anything would create a hive if I was super reactive. So what I really liked about this framework when I kind of noticed it happening and was able to describe it for myself, it was like an epiphany, because this explained why sometimes I would get hives and sometimes I wouldn't. It was all kind of a matter of how much histamine was in my body and how reactive was I. Sometimes I would get away with having a high histamine food, and sometimes I wouldn't. And sometimes I was getting tons of hives, and sometimes that wasn't so bad. It just seemed like there was no rhyme or reason. But when I started thinking about things in this way and managing the reactivity level and managing the histamine level, things started making sense. And I could draw patterns to what I was eating or what I was experiencing and what I was seeing on my skin. And that changed everything for me. It just made a lot more sense. So the goal then for me became, well, how do I keep this gap, this remissionary period, where I don't have any hives? How do I keep that gap? How do I push the histamine levels down and bring my reactivity up so I'm not reacting to everything? And my overall approach was to create that gap and hold it as long as I could so that things would just calm down. And I found that worked really reliably. And so I developed specific strategies that address those two sides of the equation. How much histamine level do I have, and trying to reduce that, and how reactive am I, and try to reduce that. So I came up with strategies that tackle both those things independently. And I'm going to cover this in the videos that follow. So there's 3 more videos to come that cover all this, and there, there's some really surprising things that I learned over the 20 some odd years that I had this. Some of it is not rocket science, but some of it was really surprising. So I'm excited to share it all. And so that's what I basically do. To summarize, I have strategies that pull the histamines down. I have strategies that improve the reactivity, and that helps me get rid of the hives. And it does it very reliably. So now I kind of live here, in the happy zone. Every once in a blue moon, I would say once every couple months, I'll see a little hive pop up. And when I do, I can go back to these strategies and it just clears up right away. And then I go back to living a normal life. I don't have to stay on a crazy diet. I don't need to take any medication. So right now, completely hive free, no medication whatsoever. So it's really been quite an adventure for me. So I'm looking forward to sharing it, and hopefully you'll take something away that helps you. So 3 more videos to follow. The next one, I guess, would be around controlling histamines. That's called How I Lower My Histamine Levels to Relieve Chronic Hives. Then there's one all about the reactivity side. how I reduce reactivity to stop chronic hives, and then there's a video called how I reduce stress and use my mind to stop chronic hives. So hopefully you find some value there. If you're suffering with this, my heart goes out to you. As I said, I hope that you can continue to find the discipline and the diligence and just the power to get up and out of bed every morning and just keep going, because there is hope. If I'm proof of anything, it's that fact. There is hope. These aren't going to last forever. You're going to get through it. You just got to keep going. So I wish you all the best. Thank you.